Hi and welcome to my OCR A A-Level Biology revision session with me, Christine. So today's lesson I want to look at xerophytes and hydrophytes. So what is a xerophyte? Well, a xerophyte is a plant that's adapted to survive in an environment that lacks water. Zero, there's no water, and a phyte just means a plant. So different plants have to be adapted in different ways, and the two that you have to know for your exam is the cacti and the marram grass. So the first thing that plants do when they are trying to ensure they don't lose too much water through the process of transpiration is they reduce their surface area of the plant. Now, by reducing the surface area of the plant, there's going to be less exposure to the environment and therefore less water being lost. Now, they can do that in a number of ways. They can reduce the number of leaves that they have. They can roll their leaves, as you can see with the marram grass at the top, or they can have spines instead. So that's what you see when you are close to cacti. So this reducing of the surface area means there's less exposure, therefore less loss of that water, less transpiration. Now, obviously, if there's not a lot of water in the environment, because water is required for photosynthesis, and you'll learn more about that when you look at Module 5 photosynthesis, the plants need to be able to store the water, and they do that by storing it in stems. So if you've ever broken a section of an aloe vera plant, for example, what you will see is the inside there's this fleshy section, and that fleshy section is where there's lots of water that's been stored. So the aloe vera plant, we use that as a medicinal purpose because it's got a soothing part to it. But this is actually a way in which this xerophyte has stored the water in a form that means that if it needs it, it can use it in a later date. Now, another thing that you'll find with a xerophyte is because they want to maintain that water inside, they don't want to lose the water, what they will have is a really thick waxy cuticle. Now, that's on both the upper and the lower epidermis, and that ensures that the water that it does have, because remember, they're living in environments that are lacking in water, that water is going to be retained within the plant. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the stomata. So when plants are photosynthesizing, they need to open their stomata so that carbon dioxide can come in for photosynthesis. Now, because of that, as a consequence of that, water vapor will be lost. That's what transpiration is, the loss of the water vapor out of the leaf or out of the stem. So the stomata is the opening in the leaf, and that opening of the stomata, if there is evaporation occurring and if there is a concentration gradient, water will diffuse out from the leaf into the environment. So if we are wanting to reduce that because the plant is living in an environment that lacks water, we don't want to lose the water too much, what the plant can adapt to is actually having a reduced number of stomata on the underside of the leaf. It can also have the stomata sunken down. So if the stomata are sunken down, what that does is that creates a environment close to the stomata which will actually be quite humid. So therefore that's affecting the concentration gradient. If there is a higher concentration outside the stomata, less water will be lost. So it's an adaptation that maintains the water inside, preventing it from being lost. And also by surrounding the stomata by hairs, any water vapor that has diffused out of the stomata, the opening, it will be able to condense down and therefore not be lost. And the last thing that can happen is actually the stomata are controlled, those openings are controlled by the guard cells. So what the xerophytes can do is they can actually control when the stomata are open. Now, if they open during the evening, at night time when the temperature is much lower, that's going to result in a decrease in the transpiration rate. That's because what you've got is the decrease in temperature means there's less energy for the evaporation, less energy, less kinetic energy, therefore less diffusion as well. So that will decrease the transpiration rate. So these are all the ways in which xerophytes are adapted to survive in this environment that lacks water. On the flip side, a hydrophyte is a plant that lives submerged in the water. And the one you need to know is the water lilies as the example. So with water lilies, their adaptations are, in a sense, the opposite. They have very thin waxy cuticles. So one of the things the OCR love to do is to get you to compare one to the other. So a xerophyte has a thick waxy cuticle, whereas a hydrophyte has a thin waxy cuticle. There's no need for that waterproofing material to prevent the evaporation occurring too quickly because it's submerged in water. It can just get some more from its environment. They have many open stomata, but the stomata are on the upper side of the leaf, and that's because obviously when they are submerged in the water, what you have is the lower side is going to be surrounded by the liquid, and gases are not diffused as well in water as they are in air. So therefore, having these stomata on the upper surface, and lots of them, ensures that that gas exchange, the carbon dioxide, can actually be diffused in and then used for photosynthesis. The other thing they have is very wide flat leaves. Now remember, these are water lilies. These are submerged in water. Therefore, they are wanting to absorb as much light for photosynthesis as possible. So by being very wide and flat, what that's going to do is that's going to maximize the absorption of light and therefore maximize the rate of photosynthesis. They also have specialized parenchyma, which are actually called arenchyma. Now these are air sacs, and these mean that the leaves can be buoyant. So they stay at the surface of the water, the environment of which the hydrophytes live in. Now that's to ensure that they again are maximizing the light that's being absorbed for photosynthesis. As water hits the Let me reframe that. As the light hits the water, this is where your physics GCSE knowledge needs to come in. Water is a different medium to air, and therefore when light is hitting that different medium, what will happen is it will be refracted, so it will be bent, and this will slow the transfer of that light, that wavelength of light, and this will therefore mean that that stops the plant being able to photosynthesize if it is lower down within the aquatic environment. So the water lily, these hydrophytes, are actually adapted to be buoyant so that they are maintaining their leaves at the surface, maximizing that light absorption. So if you like this video, then please do click on the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, do check out my revision platform, www.aiqchat.com, to help with your revision.